Welcome to another episode of Tyler Moore East. We're back here in Pistoria, where today we are going to see a lot of growth in the area. We're going to flesh out a lot of downtown. We're going to build a construction site for a future landmark tower. And we're going to finish off a new streetcar line that is going to run all along the coast here, from the end of Pistoria's streetcar line out to a brand new city that's about to be developed named Tharpton. Not too far away from here, but it's good overflow for when Pistoria finally fills up. Now, we're going to start today in the center square here, which we now know as Expression Square, where people can express their opinions. They can play their violins, they can march their protests, they can speak on their soapboxes. And we have the infamous warm water fountain that works in sub-zero temperatures. We're going to define the area in a build-out where you can find what businesses are in the downtown core, what organizations we have here. And to start out, we have the MTM production studio, the headquarters, the studios where everything is filmed. We have the production where the costumes are made, and the design where storyboards are done and writing is done. It's really quite a complex. And then we also have the residences at Expression Square, which is one of those, slapped up condo towers that cost too much. Now, I'm going to speed up the rest here because it's really boring to watch somebody else just play a game. I just want this for your information so you can see how I play, so you can see how I build, and so you can see how this city developed in its early days. So I'd like to keep it mostly human scaled, but downtown I want to have a defined skyline. I'd like to have something prominent that pokes out, that shows a meeting place, a collection place, a collective identity to the area. So it's going to be a much denser core in the downtown. I like to customize things, change the colors around. I really like blending two buildings together to make a bigger building. I'm sure you've probably already noticed whenever I have a school, quite often I blend schools together to make a giant school complex. Here downtown, I'm just going to smatter a variety of offices and businesses throughout the area so that we have a good, solid core of working destinations and businesses for people to go to. We also need some organizations for the area. So here we're going to give us some big office buildings, something more chunky with a lot of workers. This here is going to be the hydro company headquarters. We'll fill it in. Maybe we can even put some taller buildings, make it like an older building's been reworked and remodeled into a modern skyscraper, just to give it a bit more density downtown, make it look like the downtown hasn't been neglected for a generation or two, like it's keeping up with the demand of things. But then, on the other hand, sometimes they just don't work out. When you see this big glass box on top of a beautiful building, you don't always have to have that density right there. We could always build bigger around, and it's good to have some little shops and things too, because it's transitional. Downtown grows. Now here, this blue building I'm making here is the Faruqi department store, a great place where everyone in the city can find what they need. They sell housewares, they sell hardware, they sell sporting goods, they sell clothing, kitchen appliances, you name it. It's one of those middle of the road department stores, not too shishi and not out of people's budget, but more than a step up from the dollar store. Just a great place, and other businesses like it around the area where everyday common folk can find what they need, can find meeting spaces and places for their groups to come together, can have workplaces for people of all education levels. Just a good, a busy, bustling cosmopolitan district. Here I'm placing in the Davis Theatre so that we've got some good historic buildings and some cultural centers down here. We're going to build a bigger cultural center here in Expression Square as well later on. Some nice Art Deco towers, trying to fit things in nicely, fill in those empty gaps with just a few little buildings maybe. Let's see, a nice cinema perhaps. Oh, here we'll put in the Civic Theater. I think that's a good all-around accessible, beautiful, prominent building where it's not just opera, it's not just theater, it's not just this and that. Like, you can have TED Talks in there, you can have convention speeches in there, you can have ballet premieres. It's just a good overall civic theater. Pistoria is not going to be a huge city, so they're not going to have an opera house, they're not going to have a ballet school, they're not going to have one building for every little thing. It's more of an umbrella cultural institution. I'm just going to fill in the back of this building here. I know this isn't super realistic, but it looks nice at street level. There's enough depth back there that there could be a little store that kind of melds into the skyscraper that's built there. Maybe they were already there in the first place and were incorporated into the new design, even though that's a very contemporary way of building a skyscraper. But hey, maybe it started in Pistoria. Now we've got this big empty lot across the street. I'd like there to be a big landmark tower in that spot behind MTM Studios, but it's going to take a while to figure out what's going to be just right there. So for now, we'll play around with the rest of the area here, try to get some back laneways working so we can fill it in densely, rather than having some variety of empty open alleyways between every single building here. We don't want it to be mistakenly suburban. And now I'm going to try to figure out just what I'm going to place here for a large landmark tower. But, I'm not convinced by anything that I currently have subscribed to in the workshop. A lot of the buildings I've used that I like are pretty overused in all of my builds, and those that I don't use very often, I'm kind of on the borderline about. There are always things about them that I don't really like. Either they're just too big, too exaggerated. Even if it's built to real life scale, I think the real life building is just too big. So since I can't decide on anything, I'm just going to put a placeholder construction site. Very realistic. The city I live in always has a construction site. I walk past a construction site every time I leave my door. There's always something developing in a big city. Even in a small city, they have big construction sites. And this is going to be one of them. So I've built a ramp down where they've dug out, put the digging machines in. I'm going to put up some hoarding so that the pedestrians on the sidewalk don't slip down a giant hole and die in the bottom of a pit and end up, being cemented into the foundation of a building. Don't want any mob hits going on in Pistoria here. So we've got some good, safe construction hoarding around. It takes some, doing a bit of a jig through here to get things to line up properly. But I want it to be done well because this construction site, I'm thinking it might be more than just a temporary fill. It could be more symbolic and stick around for a long time until I've really found something that really says Pistoria all over it. That's going to go in this block here. Pretty prestigious site, being right off the square, right behind MTM Studios. There's a big bus stop right beside it here. So because of all that traffic on the sidewalk, I'm going to make an extension of the sidewalk here, just using some pedestrian paths, vanilla paths that will go up the edge here and sort of define the edges of the site, gives people more pavement to walk on the sidewalk, and just finishes things off a bit. Kind of makes the construction site walls look like a paved foundation, like poured concrete. We've got the snow fence in here now to keep the workers safe from rolling down that hill as they excavate the foundation. They're going to need a place to go to the washroom too, so let's give them some porta potties. That's an essential need on any work site. They're going to need a way to haul all that dirt out of the site too without having to go up and down, over the hoarding. So here's a gate for them to drive through, so they're not completely sealed in, and a good sturdy crane that can both help lift carts full of dirt out and lower construction materials in. Now here we have downtown high school, and it's quite impressive. It has a huge capacity. It's 3 different schools put together, plus a soccer field. So in order to help out the density downtown, we need workers for all these businesses we just put up. So we're going to put a mid-scale condo tower in here. We'll say the school board gave them a space to build. Now moving on to building out of Pistoria towards Tharpton, a new town that has yet to be built, but has been laid out and designed. On the opposite end of the coast here, near the river delta. Now, I'm going to make this a rainbow road, both for aesthetics, because it's going to be pretty, 2, for identity, because a new city needs to develop its character, and 3, to cement in our city's design proof that we care about equity. And we're going to make this train station square in Tharpton here called Equity Square. It's going to be a nice deep indigo. And, a lot of cities around the world in more progressive areas might have a rainbow crosswalk in an area near where they have their pride celebrations, per se. But this district is doing more than just a crosswalk. It's a bit more than just the symbolism. And now we're going to go on a streetcar ride to see this rainbow road as it extends all the way out to Tharpton, to see what will eventually build out to be, hopefully, a beautiful coastal town. And while we're doing this, I'm going to wax nostalgic about the CLRV, the absolute best public transit vehicle I've ever been on. I've lived in Toronto nearly 15 years. I've traveled all around several different parts of the world and been on transit systems in a lot of different countries. The CLRV still, to me, is the number one. I will first of all point out its biggest downfall is that it is not accessible. It had some very steep steps to step up. But once, if you could clear that, you had the most comfortable, dignified ride through the city. Where you were sitting, you could look above the cars, which meant you could see all the buildings you went by, all the shop windows with the sale signs, so you could see where to go to get your deals. You could see all of the beautiful architecture in the city. You could see the weather. You could see the people on the sidewalk. You could see people sitting at red lights in their cars, picking their noses and texting on their cell phones, which was actually really funny. One time, our former mayor, Rob Ford, who very few people liked, and I really did not like, he was caught texting on his cell phone by a 6-year-old kid going to school with his mom on the streetcar. And they took a picture and they sent it to the news. Nobody did anything about it, of course, but it's just kind of funny that the people who took public transit were up above everybody else. And at that time, the shorter streetcars here They moved faster because it didn't take as long for them to stop, and it didn't take as long for them to speed up because they were shorter, they were lighter, they were speedier. They were also much, much wider than our current streetcars, so you had space. When you walked up and down the aisle, you weren't elbowing people in the head or being elbowed in the head by people walking up and down the aisles. Also, the middle aisle had rubber grooves and traction so that you didn't slip on the wet, slushy, wet floor in the spring, fall, and winter when it's very wet and snowy and rainy here in Toronto. And these channels in the floor, all the water rushed through them like a little stream, a little river, right to the back door and poured out. Wasn't messy, wasn't slippery, super safe. The windows opened so you could get a breeze in there. You could feel that first fresh spring breeze on a cold February day when it just warmed up above freezing, and smell that beautiful spring smell blowing through the car and the breeze on your face. It was so nice. It was so humane. Now, our current Bombardier models that we have, which are already having problems with the floors falling out of them, we have had to have major problems sending them back to Bombardier to be fixed and rebuilt again. And we've only had them since, I think, 2014 was when they first started coming out. They're too heavy. It takes too long for them to speed up. It takes too long for them to slow down. So overall, they move slower. They're much longer, owing to their weight. Because they're longer, it's much more difficult for drivers to pass by them, which makes the drivers much more angry and irate, which means they step on the gas, put the pedal to the metal, causing much riskier boarding and offloading for the streetcar. They also, they've had to fix a lot of the streetcar platforms to be the right height. That took years for them to do. And the new streetcars, though they are accessible, they're only accessible in the middle section out of 5 sections. And you're only allowed to board in the accessible door in the middle and stay in that middle section, which isn't very big. So you can really only fit maybe 4 people with wheelchairs or walkers or strollers or bicycles in the center, and everybody else still has to go through the rest of the streetcar where the floor is lumpy and bumpy going over the wheels and the mechanics. No gripping on it, so it is slippery and wet when you're walking up and down the hills over the wheels. The new streetcars are a lot narrower, meaning that the aisles are narrower and you bump into everybody. I'm a rather thin person and I have difficulty navigating these streetcars. If you're a person who's a bit heavier set, good luck to you, because it is not going to be a fun ride. Also, the windows don't open. They have air conditioning and heating, but they're too cheap to ever turn on the air conditioning, or possibly the driver who has just been sitting stationary at their little post for hours upon hours without moving, probably not feeling very warm, not turning on the air conditioner on a hot day. No windows open. Now we have COVID. That is a serious transmission point for viral infections in a sealed up tank without any windows or ventilation. In wintertime, they rarely turn the heat on. You just have to kind of huddle together for body heat. Also not good these days in the pandemics. I just really miss the days of these wonderful CLRVs and the ALRVs, the articulated versions that carried more. They were wonderful. Whatever city inherited these or bought these from the Toronto Transit Commission, may you enjoy them for as long as they last. May you have all the replacement parts you need for them, and please never get rid of them because they are wonderful. Even the new accessible ones aren't all that accessible. I'll try to rein in my love for the CLRV now and my disdain for more modern streetcars. I've been on great modern streetcars in Brussels. They have great shorter modern streetcars. But these new small trains just don't work in traffic. Probably great on a separated track with for more space between each stop, but in Toronto's streetcar tram system on the city streets, they just don't work well. We have more people driving now because it's a pain to take the new streetcars, which means traffic is more congested, which means the streetcars take even longer, which means even fewer people take transit now. It's a snowball effect. But here in Equity Square, we're going to build a monument. This is for all of those people in marginalized communities who are wrongfully discriminated against, where in the region of the Tyler Moor, in the Tyler Moor East, they cannot be discriminated against. They have all their rights protected. And everybody here, as I said, this is not for realism. This is for escapism and fun and beauty, and for a nice place, a respite to go to. So here, everybody's treated equally, and we certainly make a point of showing that right in front of the main train station square here in Tharpton. I'm just going to bob out these deciduous trees, make it fit a bit more with the winter theme I've got going for the moment, because it is winter here where I live. We don't have any snow on the ground right now, but we did have some very early snow for this region. Had, probably about 4 to 6 inches. Lasted about a week. The neighbors built a snowman out of it. You rarely get to build a snowman out of our snow until at least January here. So that was... I'm trying to make my city here align with my own environment here at home. I'm sure once I get tired of snow by midwinter, there will be palm trees in the Tyler Moor. Just a few, maybe. Maybe a palm house in a botanical garden. But for now, we've got some nice fir trees here at the station. I'm going to mirror those on the other side just to make it feel a little less off balance. I like asymmetry, but only in certain situations. This is one where I would prefer it to be a little more evenly weighted. So behind the most glorious public washroom ever designed, the PTT washroom, we'll put some more trees. Now, this PTT washroom is located specifically here in Equity Square because it is a non-gendered, fully accessible bathroom. If you're not familiar with them, the way they're designed is the center of the building has one hall, and on either side of that hall are separate toilet rooms, completely divided off with locking doors so that nobody can jump over, no one can jump under, no one can steal your jacket or your shopping bag, no one can harass you, no one can film you because that happens. Very safe, wheelchair accessible, non-gendered, so no one can complain about a trans person being in there. No one can complain about a man being in there. No one can complain about a woman or a child or an elder person. Everyone belongs in there. And there are urinals there for waterless washroom access for those who stand to go to the washroom, but they are not located within the building. They are located on the outside, where I've placed the trees in front of as a shield there. And this, you might think, is disgraceful. There's no privacy. People are just urinating in public. But really what it's meant for is so that no shenanigans go on, because that happens sometimes. So this is the safest, most accessible, most equitable washroom that I have ever known in any design. And that is why it is in Equity Square. Tharpton Station. And that's probably about all we've got for today, because we're already running into a half-hour long episode here, and a lot of diatribes from me about transit and equity and washrooms. So we'll do a nice little overview here of our Rainbow Road, try to get a good view of the transit system here in Tharpton. We might want to, we're going to stick a new bus line in here just in the center of the city, because the transit system for Tharpton is pretty pretty sufficient. We've got a big streetcar line and a long bus line that wrap around the city. But I think one just to bisect them, to go up and down in crossways, just so you can get through the city a bit more easily, instead of having to walk 5 blocks to go up to the next transit line. So we'll quickly here put in a couple bus loops. We'll make it a city block so the bus can go around a full block, and instead of just taking up more downtown city space with a little bus loop. Could make it more colors, but that might just get confusing. The Rainbow Road should maybe be the Rainbow Road. If every road becomes a Rainbow Road, first of all, it might take away from the specialness of the Rainbow Road. Second of all, and most importantly, wayfinding might be way more difficult in the community if every other road is a different color. So we'll keep it standard, status quo pavement for the rest of it here. Then up past the Rainbow Road, we'll put the next bus loop up here, somewhere near the highway on-ramps. So if somebody wants to drive off the highway into the city and get on public transit, it won't be too difficult. Now, I think we'll have to put the bus line in, figure out which buses we're going to use. I personally really like to use the Scania series of buses. They have a low floor, articulated, and a double-decker version. And all of them are line colored, which is why I really like to use them. But they're also really high capacity for a bus, which to me I prefer to use because I really hate waiting for a bus or a streetcar to come, and it just drives right past me because it is too full to take anybody else on. So I prefer to have a high capacity bus that is 1/3 empty and not operating at full capacity, to make sure that I'm encouraging more people to take transit. I have free public transit in this land of unlimited money, so I really want it to be put to good use. It makes no sense to have a pretty much overbuilt transit system if nobody's using it and everybody's clogging the streets with cars anyway. We'll color it a nice purple to complement the blue of the Rainbow Road streetcar line, which is officially named the Ligne l'Arc-en-Ciel, French for the Rainbow Line. I decided the Tyler Moore might as well be bilingual. I live in a bilingual country. My region is not bilingual, but that makes me rather disappointed in my region. So why not make Tyler Moore as diverse and welcoming and accepting a safe space as can be for all of us. Everyone belongs here. Everyone has a safe place to live and work and socialize and have fun and be happy and grow and learn. The fact that so far our main department store is owned by a family who came to Pistoria from Islamabad, and that it is the most popular store in town, gives us an idea of how diverse this city is going to be. I think we're going to wrap it up about here. We've got our lovely rainbow connections that Kermit can sing about, and I think we'll wrap it up. Downtown Pistoria, one little swirl around so you can see the bus depot and parking garage and the concert hall, the arena, all built later on, but a more fleshed out Pistoria as it stands today. Now you've seen how it has come to be. If you like this, or you have any questions, or you have anything you want to add to Pistoria, put a comment below. Let me know. I would love to include your ideas in this town too. Lots of room to grow here. Lots of room for everybody. Thank you for joining me, and have a great day.